So let's talk about the destructive potential of the Daemon Primarch of the Emperor's Children. Exactly what can Fulgrim do in battle? Between some scary melee damage, enormous movement, and fights first. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Emperor's Children once more, and certainly one of the datasheets that people have been most keen to see out of the new book is the new Primarch that's going to be returning to the fold in Warhammer 40k, and how powerful and scary Fulgrim is in-game. As the Primarch of one of the 20 Space Marine legions, Fulgrim's a big deal in Warhammer 40k, the leader of the Emperor's Children and dedicated to the pursuit of perfection, perhaps making him unusually easy prey for the temptations of Slaanesh during the Horus Heresy. He's got a fairly impressive kill tally as well, notably cutting down both Ferrus Manus and laying Guilliman low, even if some Eldari magic was used to revive him in the Indomitus era. And after embracing his patron deity, he's now a full-fledged Daemon Primarch, a massive great big serpentine body, wings and 4 arms, and is a monstrously powerful duelist, well capable of tangling with any of his peers. It's been thought that he was residing on a pleasure planet within the Eye of Terror, but he now seems to be abroad in the galaxy once again, leading his legion against the Imperium once more. Fulgrim does have a sculpt for his pre-demon self, but now we basically have 2 different ones for his twisted serpentine body. The model on the left is the Resin Heresy era one, representing him not too long after having ascended to demonhood, and now we have the utterly twisted Warhammer 40k version, this one being the version of him that has sat languishing in the Eye of Terror for a very long time. In general, the model was pretty well received. He's armed with a twisted demon claw, 2 blades, one of which might be a restored blade of the one that Ferrus Manus gifted him, plus a great big malefic lash. His serpentine body all coiled round, and some rather disturbing peeled back skin to reveal an icon of Slaanesh on his sort of midriff there. He's also got a whole choice of different heads as well, many of which seem to be utterly enjoying himself, and here's a few more close-ups of different parts of his body. His model likely around the sort of £100 or $170 sort of mark, judging by his brother Primarchs. Let's get on to his in-game rules though from Codex Emperor's Children, and his stat line as you'd expect is a rather mighty one, a big movement of 16 inches which is faster than his brother's, toughness 11 with a 2+ save and a 4+ invulnerable save, 16 wounds, a leadership 5 and OC 6. Most of those stats are pretty consistent with his brothers. Mortarion is a little tougher, but the rest are all toughness 11, so he's no less tough there, despite being a bit faster. He's got a good save and a lot of wounds, which means that you are going to need a whole bunch of firepower to take him down. He'll like cover quite a lot as he advances up the board with that 2+ save, and the OC means he has at least some presence on objectives, even if he's not going to have all that much of that per point. As per normal degrading things, he's -1 to hit when he's 6 wounds or less, so he won't be quite as accurate then. If you include him in the army, then he has to be the Warlord. He's certainly not going to be taking orders from a lesser character of the Emperor's Children. He has Fly, Deep Strike and Deadly Demise D6, though I don't think you'd usually want to Deep Strike him, to be honest. With his massive threat range, he should be able to get into the things that he wanted and not be needing to rely on a big unreliable 9-inch charge. For the stat line here, that does seem pretty much as I would have guessed. Big Demon Primarch things, but a little bit faster than most due to the blessings of his patron deity. Getting onto his weapons next, and he has a Malefic Lash. This one could potentially clear out a bunch of infantry as he closes in, and could be used to hand out his poison special rule as well. This one gives you 6 attacks at a 12-inch range, hitting on a 2+ with strength 8, AP -2, damage 2, and sustained hits 1. That is a fairly punchy profile against the vast majority of normal sort of medium-sized infantry units. Anything that's a standard Space Marine size or smaller is probably going to take a bunch of casualties against that. It might be one to occasionally use sparingly though, if otherwise he's got quite a long charge. You wouldn't want to just kill a bunch of infantry and then deny him all his melee damage. In close combat he does hit a fair bit harder. He's got 2 profiles, Demonic Blades plus some extra attacks from his Serpentine Tail. For the Demon Blades, he gets 6 attacks at strength 14, AP -3, damage D6 +1 with sustained hits 1 there. So that does mean usually he's going to get as many hits as attacks on average, though he can trade that out for a sweep profile at a similar sort of profile to that Malefic Lash at strength 8, AP -2 and damage 2. On top of that, he gets a bunch of extra attacks for that tail, hitting on a 2+ at strength 6, AP -1 and damage 1, though no sustained hits on that one. It does really seem kind of as you'd expect for a Slaanesh Demon Primarch, a huge amount of attacks, though maybe not hitting with the same sheer strength as say Angron. From a very rough damage output of that, with no additional buffs, these are the sort of numbers that you could expect him to hit in close combat. He'll absolutely go through most horde units, killing something like 13 termagants or guardsmen equivalents. The strength 8 and damage 2 is great against space marines, he kills around about 7 or 8 intercessors, and his strength 8 damage at range is particularly good against them as well. He's not quite a standout into Terminator equivalents, not having a flat damage 3 profile does hurt him a bit there, so in melee you only get around about 2 or 3. But against certain bigger stuff he can hit a fair bit harder, around 16 wounds to a toughness 10 vehicle with a 3+ save, and is pretty similar against toughness 12 as well. Finally, if he's tangling with one of his peers, he does around about 9 wounds to Angron, or if your opponent happens to bring a Fulgrim model along to the fight. It feels like he's maybe going to have his best value against big single models, or things that are Space Marine size, perhaps being just a little bit less effective against Terminator equivalents. He will potentially have those Malefic Lash attacks as he closes in though, and the chance to deal some mortal wounds with his poison special rule if he does damage things but not destroy them. Talking of which, his main datasheet special rule that isn't the pick 3 one is Demonic Poisons. This one's kind of an interesting one, though I feel like in a lot of games it might not really make all that much impact. Every time he shoots and fights, he gets to choose one enemy unit that he's hit with at least one attack, and for the rest of the battle that unit is poisoned. Then after that, in each player's command phase, you roll a dice and on a 4+, they take D3 mortal wounds, and there's a pretty reasonable chance that they're going to take a bunch of damage if, say, he hits something early and they have to continue to roll for the rest of the game. Having to do that in both players' command phase is going to stack up the damage at least fairly reliably. It does maybe feel like a lot of things that he hits in melee are probably going to have taken massive damage anyway, and perhaps have already been wiped out, but maybe it could be a small incentive to throw one attack against something else, even if he mainly wants to hit one thing, and it could give you a different incentive to use that Malefic Lash on something that he is not going to be charging this turn, perhaps to mark something early-ish for that rule. Though I feel like you still ideally want to be hitting something that it's actually quite good against, as its damage profile is alright, particularly compared with just a few mortal wounds. It certainly seems interesting enough though, definitely pretty intimidating to just have the potential that, say, could you lose anywhere up to 6 wounds off a unit if the Emperor's Children player rolls really well, just over the course of one turn, for no extra action whatsoever. It's not something that's going to absolutely reliably finish things off though, given it triggers on the 4+. Finally though, like his brother Primarchs, he gets the option of picking 3 powerful abilities for what would often be his sort of command and control abilities, though for this one he personally gets things that maybe more mess with the enemy than they do help out the other Emperor's Children nearby. Curiously, it looks like these ones are chosen in the opponent's command phase, so not in yours, so you can basically see the position that Fulgrim's in, and decide which of the rules is going to mess with the enemy army that he's fighting the most. First up, he has Beguiling Form, which gives him a -1 to hit. That's a nice, simple and effective one. Maybe could be a good one if he is coming up against an enemy gun line. And it will be more effective against enemies that rely on a lower ballistic skill or weapon skill to hit him. Otherwise though, and maybe the most intimidating one, is Demonic Speed for fights first. With a scary melee profile like he's got, it means that a lot of units just won't really be able to justify charging him. If they charge him, then he'll get to hit them first, potentially taking a massive chunk out of the unit so they don't deal as much damage. And that could be a really big deal against melee armies where they don't really have much choice but to try and kill him in close combat. It feels like if there's anything scary that's going to be lining up charges on him, then that'll probably be the one to go for. Finally, the last one is Enthralling Hypnosis. And that means that enemy units within 6 inches that are selected to fall back must take a leadership test, and if they fail the test, then they must remain stationary instead of falling back. That one's going to be pretty situational depending on what units are nearby to actually have the chance of triggering that. I guess if he's managed to keep something in combat, it could be big. It's probably going to be most important if he was, say, tagging an enemy gunline unit, something that really wanted to back away from him and not be killed in the enemy turn, but that could give them a chance to just have to stay there and take a beating from his blades. This one could be good for other Emperor's Children combats happening nearby as well. It is really quite unreliable though. For most armies, most of the time they'll just pass that leadership test, so I feel like in general most people will be seeking out reliable value from the others. They're all impactful enough rules to be the right choice sometimes though. I feel like broadly the decision might be that it's usually fights first against melee armies, -1 to hit against primarily ranged ones, weighing up the two against a more balanced foe, and then Enthralling Hypnosis if it could be absolutely game changing to prevent a key fallback even if it's a low chance to trigger. Otherwise, for support for him, he gets the army rule and has the option of other buffs that he can get from detachments. Thrill Seekers is the Emperor's Children army rule, and this one allows him to basically advance, shoot and charge, and fall back, shoot and charge, though with some restrictions. If he's fighting alone though, and just zooming up the board, it means that with advance and charge, he could have an average 27-inch charge threat range, and still hand out some damage and maybe his poisoned ability with that Malefic Whip as he closes in. That's a massive great big threat range. Sometimes that could easily be enough to make first turn charges from one deployment zone to the next, depending on the exact table setup. The opponent's really going to have to respect that and keep a wide berth if they don't want to have their units wind up in close combat with him. That certainly means he's probably going to get exactly where he wants on turn 2 if he does have a turn of patience. Fallback shoot and charge definitely isn't bad as well. It means that opponents can't lock him up with a super tanky unit. He just have to make sure that he's falling back and attacking something different, as he wouldn't be able to target the unit nearby if he was making use of that rule. Otherwise, as a big central model, is going to be interesting for any other buffs that you can give him. I feel like most of the detachments maybe don't feel ridiculously stand out for him, though there are a good bunch of them that can give him fairly significant melee damage boosts. Going through them quickly, Slaanesh Chosen can give him reroll wound rolls. If he is the favoured unit, he'll start out as that, being the Warlord, but it does mean that other character units might potentially steal his thunder from time to time unless you feed it command points. They also have a surge move stratagem after he's been shot, which could be big for having him jump into combat with something, particularly in the context of fights first. The Coterie of the Conceited means that you could have some big damage buffs if you get that tally going. He'd also be the Warlord in that, so it might mean that you might have to play a bit more cagey with him, given that the tally will stop when the Warlord's dead. But otherwise, with its character focus, their stratagems for 6+ feel no pain, ignores modifiers if it's relevant. The sort of Armour of Contempt, -1 AP for enemies, which could be nice in combination with cover, and a reroll hits one. The Mercurial Host is the fast-moving detachment. Rerolling advanced rolls gives him a little bit more reliability as to his fast strike range. A reactive move of 6 inches could be enormous on a model this big and powerful though, and there's a -1 to hit from shooting one. Peerless Bladesman gives him lethal hits in melee, though most of the time he will be wounding on a 3+ or better, as he'd usually choose the profile that does so. I've got a few other fun melee support ones, stratagems for -1 to hit on melee, fight on death, an extra AP if he needs it, and a potentially fun one to charge a unit that just fell back if it's not got enough movement to get away properly. And then finally Carnival of Excess, that could give him critical hits on a 5+ if he is near demons. Again, just that bit more damage if he can coordinate and remain nearby. The only one that really doesn't add so much extra for him is the transport focused one, as basically everything there is infantry or transport related. Out of these, he definitely feels like the Coterie of the Conceited could be an interesting one for him. Reroll wound rolls doesn't seem too bad, and he's a massive model to have that on. Most of the rest have something at least interesting though, and I feel like he is just a model that's basically going to be pretty happy doing what he's doing regardless of the detachment. At the right points cost, he could certainly be a pretty big threat in any of them. Overall, for first impressions, he's looking really quite strong, obviously final points depending when Games Workshop release the digital download for them. He's got enormous threat range, adequately scary damage, that means that a whole bunch of units will just die in one round of close combat to his threats, and particularly in certain detachments that make him scarier. The poison could be a nice bonus effect that could have a big yield depending on how you roll those 4+. Otherwise, fights first is maybe the biggest and most notable thing. He could be an absolute terror unit against certain melee armies that just can't afford to charge him, and I guess if not, swap to the -1 to hit, and that could be the default to just make him that bit tougher against ranged threats. Like his other Primarchs, he's going to be the sort of big model syndrome guy that'll make him important not to die too early and expend him too easily, but also not to waste him as a big threat as well. With the amount of points he'll cost, he won't be able to just sit at home and come out to play too late. So any way that he could pounce on an isolated enemy unit and stay safe from the biggest, scariest stuff would probably be appreciated. He does look like he's going to have a good chance to be a central unit in a good bunch of lists though on first impressions. He's one of the only really big hitters of the Codex, alongside maybe Flawless Blades to take down really tough stuff. I feel like he's got enough other interesting stuff going on to make him a tempting choice. I believe the rumoured points cost for him was a little bit under 400 points. I guess we'll see what Games Workshop does when the digital ones come out though. In any case though, let me know your thoughts on Fulgrim's rules. How strong is he looking right now? And is he as scary as you would expect? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you'd like to see more like this, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. I'll certainly have a good number of other videos coming for the Emperor's Children. Looking forward to talking through a few more units and doing the Codex review. If you'd like to support and keep all the videos coming, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below if you have been enjoying the content. Channel patrons do get a few advantages. seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.